Thank you. It's an honor and pleasure to be here once again. And the topic of fear has become especially relevant in the last few days. What's the reason? The coronavirus, yeah. I'm supposed to go from here to America, but I've been advised to be careful. So all of us are taking precautions. At one level, fear is like a constant background noise in our lives. But sometimes it starts coming to the foreground like a shrill or even a scream. And that is the time when we start taking greater notice of it, and then we have to deal with it. But let's look at, I'll talk about this in three broad parts. First, we'll differentiate between fear and fearfulness. And then I'll talk about what causes fear. And then I'll talk about how we can deal with our fears. So first of all, fear itself is not a bad thing. It's not something that we necessarily have to get rid of. Fear is a natural and desirable response to danger. Biologically and psychologically, we've evolved and designed in such a way that we basically we protect ourselves from danger. And the sensation or the emotion that points us to danger is fear. So fear is not only natural, it is even essential for our safety. So if there is danger and we feel fear, then we are protected. So say we are here, the danger is here, and in our mind there's the emotion of fear. We take the necessary precautions then. However, different from fear is fearfulness. So as the word fearfulness means, they're full of fear. So that means that the response, the reaction of fear is present even when the danger is not present. Or even when the danger is present in a relatively less pronounced way. So basically, one reason why we as a society are much more fearful than maybe a few decades or a few centuries ago, and this is seen from the sheer number of people who have mental health issues. One of them is anxiety. One reason is that, so as I said, there is the stimulus, which is the danger. Then there is a reaction, a response, which is fear, and we are the experiencer. So we perceive the stimulus and we experience the response. And that way we create or maintain a safe distance between us and the danger. However, as our society has become more and more complicated, our economy, our political arrangement, our social interactions, so the dangers to us have become less and less tangible. So a deer in a jungle has a very tangible object of terror. That's a tiger or lion. But for us, not many of us really live in fear that some person will pounce on us and rob us. That's a fear. But our fears are much more diffused. So now because of globalization, so something that happened in the markets of Wuhan in China, that's affecting the whole world. And a virus is so small, how do you fight with it? Or if the global economy goes down, then there's no tangible enemy. There's no tangible source of the danger. And because of that, what happens is, the danger is there, and it is left to our mind to decide whether the danger is something which is like a constant background noise, or it should become a shrill. In one sense, insecurity is always there in the world. But sometimes it is very pronounced. So in the world which we live in today, whether the danger is pronounced or not, because the source of the danger itself is not tangible, so it's very difficult for us to process it. And that's why our brains and our minds tend to stay in a constant mode of being hyper alert. And that's how we become more and more fearful. So fear is healthy, but fearfulness is unhealthy. Unhealthy because, first of all, we exhaust ourselves faster. And another reason is because it distorts our perceptions. In some ways, if we are on high alert, it's good. But if you have to constantly stay on high alert, it is not that easy. It's like, say, in army, if the soldiers have to be constantly 24 hours a day at attention, they'll get exhausted very quickly. So for us, when we have to constantly be high alert, and when should we be high alert, that is left for our mind to decide. That's how we end up becoming fearful. So now, basically, how does fear arise? So there's, as I said, there's a danger outside, and there is a response inside. Now, when the response comes, it comes primarily by the imagination of our mind. The yoga texts of ancient India posit a three-level conception of the human being. That we human beings are not just physical creatures. There's the body, there's the mind, and there's the consciousness. So this is something similar to a computer program where there's hardware, software, and user. So there is a physical danger. And then there is at the hardware level, some signal comes in. And the software level, some notification comes up. Oh, there's a danger. And we have to respond to it. So when there is fearfulness, if we have to face our fears, we need to understand the difference between fear and fearfulness. And the difference is, ideally speaking, the body, the consciousness, the mind, and the body, they need to be aligned in one line. And when they're aligned in this way, then proper perception takes place. But when there is misalignment, that's when our mind starts imagining some things. That's when we become absent-minded. The classic example of absent-mindedness is, say, somebody has a ranch and they are riding on a horse, searching all over the ranch for the horse on which they are riding. Where is my horse? Where is my horse? They're worried. So what has happened is, the consciousness is here, the mind is here, and the body is here. So you could say consciousness is like the source of light, like the bulb. So that is, the source of the consciousness is what is sometimes called as the soul. From the soul, consciousness comes out as a beam of light. And consciousness comes to the mind, and through the mind to the outer world, to the physical level. So when there is misalignment, so the perceivers are here, and then there is a misalignment between the body and the mind. That's when fear starts going out of control. That means, what is the reality and what is the imagination? We are unable to differentiate, and then we get caught. Once there was a woman, she went to a doctor and she said that, Doctor, there's a frog in my stomach. And the frog is running around and creating havoc. The doctor said, no, there's no frog there. A frog can't survive here. No, it's there. So the doctor said, it's not there. She went to a second doctor, third doctor. Finally, when she went to a 10th doctor, what happened? The 10th doctor heard her story, how she has been with so many doctors. So she said that, okay, let me check. And he checked. Oh, really? And actually, I can sense a frog here. Oh, thank God. What do you need to do? He said, we have to do surgery to operate it and remove it. Okay, when do you want to do it? He says, right away. Okay. Then they planned it. And then he gave her anesthesia and did some small incisions near her belly. And he told one of her his nurses to go to a nearby pond and get a small frog from there. Now when she came back with the frog, she came back to consciousness and she said, this was the frog we found in your belly. Thank God. You're relieved. You have so much anxiety. Nobody was ready to believe me, but you believe me. I'm free from this fear now. And she went away, and the doctor and the medical staff saw that as a clever solution. And A week later, she came back. In great anxiety, doctor, the frog had babies. So what happens when the mind has its imagination? There is a misalignment between the body and the mind. And when that happens, the mind starts imagining, and the imagination cannot be dealt with except at the level of the mind. So physical things can be dealt at the physical level. We have to identify the mind and we have to distance ourselves from it. So I talked a little about how fear arises and why it is desire, why it is an essential part. But then how fear works against us. When it starts overwhelming us. When our mind's imagination starts becoming hyper-activated unnecessarily. So basically, when we have fear and it becomes fear and fearfulnesses, there is false evidence that appears real to us. There's something small which we exaggerate and we think this is evidence of a catastrophe coming upon me. But there is some evidence, but the magnitude of it, there is some sensation in that woman's belly which is uncomfortable. But it was her imagination, it's a frog. Now normally, whenever there is fear, in the animal world, broadly there are two responses, which is fight or flight. And these responses do not work because our problems are much more sophisticated. But we may also exhibit similar responses. For us, the flight response is just forget everything and run. And this often causes a lot of problems. Say, for example, if there's a movie theater or a music concert and a fire occurs over here, we just had this information about how to deal with fire. Quite often in places like India, if something like this happens, the fire doesn't cause as much damage as the stampede after the fire. So it's the flight response. Just forget everything and run. That is activated by fear, and that is also unhealthy. And conversely, there can be the fight response. When there's fear, I am going to overcome things. But we live in a complex world where the controllables for us are few. We work with so many people and we can't control everyone's behavior. Not to speak of everyone's behavior. We sometimes can't control our own behavior. So, what do we do? So for this, a healthier response to this would be, this would be the main part of, I talked about this metaphor. About the body as the hardware, the mind as software, and the consciousness as the user. So now here, I mentioned this metaphor briefly, but I'll elaborate on this. When the functioning happens properly, this mind, which is inside us like a screen, which will act like a window and shows the outer world. So we see things clearly. This is how things are. But instead of a window, this can start acting like a TV screen. And the moment it starts acting like a TV screen, it starts imagining things. Like a horror movie may start off over there. And once the horror movie starts off, we become terrified. So essentially, to deal with fear, we need to first look at the mind before we look with the mind. Look at the mind means, what are the kind of thoughts going on in our mind? Are we just imagining, or is the mind calm? Is the mind agitated? If it's agitated, then that will make my perception distorted. So how do we calm the mind down? I'll talk about 4 principles for this. This is also another acronym, FEAR. So FEAR, focus, engage, arise, and release. So I talked about these 3 levels, the body, the mind, and the consciousness. So now, fear in the sense of fearfulness. Now I talk about fear as a healthy fear. There are practical responses which we have to take care of. But fear in the sense of fearfulness, to deal with it, it's the best way is when the mind is creating some imagination and driving us crazy. it's very difficult to counter the mind. So the best way to do it is to get out of the head, get out of the mind. And there are two ways to get out of it. I talked about 3-level reality: body, mind, and spirit. So either go down to the level of the body or rise up to the level of the spirit. The first two in fear, they talk about going down to the level of the body. And the next two will talk about rising up to the level of spirit. So focus and engage. Focus simply means when the mind starts imagining, oh, this may happen, that may happen, that may happen, that may happen. So reduce the problem. How does this affect me right now? How does this affect me right now? Once we start with this, otherwise the mind's imagination, problems become bigger and bigger and bigger. Now it might affect me in the future and I will deal with it in the future. But the future doesn't hurt us today. It can't hurt us today. There will be future problems and we do need to prepare for them. But one part of preparing for the future is by staying grounded in the present. Then we can do something to prepare for the future. I was at a mental health and spirituality convention in Connecticut in America. There are different people were talking about how they had mental health problems and how they overcame it. So there was a girl who was telling about how she got a panic attack. Now panic attack can be a medical condition also, or sometimes it can just be panic. So it was, for example, more like panic. And then when I explained the schema of the body mind, so she said, this is how I made sense of it, what had happened. So she was studying in a college, and by the side she used to wait tables to get some money. So once she was taking some water for a client in the hotel, and then somehow the glass of water slipped from her hands. And as soon as the glass of water slipped, the loud noise, the spilling, the mess. But she started thinking that if I can't carry even one glass of water, what am I going to do with my whole life? How will I carry myself in my whole life? I started thinking, I'm useless, I'm worthless. Now, how many of us have spilled some water sometime? Practically all of us, sometime or the other. So now, what happened over here is, if we can just bring it down, okay, how does this affect me right now? Okay, maybe this is a little embarrassing, maybe a little messy. Okay, just wipe it, just mop it off and move on. So once we let the mind take free control, then it can exacerbate, extrapolate, exaggerate the problem to any extreme. Where from the dropping of a glass, one may start questioning one's own entire self-worth and entire existence also. So shrink the problem. How does this affect me right now? So with respect to the coronavirus, okay, what if I get it? That's a valid fear. But how does it affect me right now? So focus is basically when we interact with the world, there are two things we do. One is we take information from the outer world and we act on the world. So in focus, we need to reduce our perception so that we focus on what is relevant. We take in the right information. Okay, how does this affect me right now? Okay, that may happen, that may happen. Okay, that is all fine. But how does it affect me right now? Well, right now there is no danger for me. But maybe when I travel, I need to have a mask or I need to use sanitizers or whatever. I should avoid shaking hands with people or whatever we want to. Precautions are there. The appropriate focus means shrink the problem. Then that brings us to the second part. Engage. As I said, so if I want to go back to the analytical frame once again, I said to deal with fear, either go down below the mind or go up above the mind to the spirit. So we are talking about going down first. Now when you're going down and come to the level of the body. So with the body, we perceive in the outer world and we act on the outer world. So we regulate our perception by the first point, focus. sometimes when we are feeling panicky, just asking these questions repeatedly to ourselves. Now, how does this affect me right now? And what can I do about it right now? If we just ask these questions repeatedly and then we start doing whatever is necessary, what can I do about this right now? So, as soon as we start doing something tangible, our mind stops having that much control on us. Psychologists did some studies about when is the time when people feel the most anxiety. Now we are not talking about fear in the sense of the presence of danger, but otherwise normally when is it that people feel the most anxiety? So do any of you have a daily anxiety time? Maybe 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening? No, we don't have like that. At one level, as I said, anxiety is like a background noise that is there. But what psychologists found is that people feel the most anxiety during their leisure time or more of their idle time. During our idle time, our mind's imagination works overtime. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? So now, this isn't, so to prevent this, it doesn't mean that we have to be constantly running around doing things, but we need to be constructively engaged. That constructive engagement can also be relaxation, it can also be deep breathing. So one way to ground ourselves in the physical level is simply to, when we feel worried, then just start breathing deeply and notice your breath. Because the breath is something that is constantly going on, and if we start noticing it, that itself gets us out of our thoughts. And additionally, because if we slow down our breath, it slows down our mind also. So what can I do about it right now? That grounds us at the physical level of reality. And as soon as we start dealing with the problem as much as we can, then all that we can't deal with, we feel confident about it. I'm doing something right now, and when something else comes up, I'll deal with that. So these are the first two ways. Get out of the mind by going down to the level of the body. And the other is go up to the level of the spirit. So one of the tenets of the proposition of the yoga tradition is that we are at our core spiritual beings. We are indestructible. Now at one level, the physical things around us can be destroyed. Our mental conceptions can be destroyed. We might think that so-and-so person is very trustworthy. It's said about politicians that they shake your hands before the elections and they shake your confidence after the elections. So the faith we had in them was a conception in our mind. So physical things can be destroyed, conceptions in our mind can be destroyed. But we exist as observers, experiencers separate from those. So rising to the higher level means we're just becoming aware that I am different. I am different from my situations, I am different from my emotions. I am their observer of both. So I am their observer. And then once I understand I'm an observer, then we can be concerned without being disturbed. Because the things matter to us, so it's a matter of concern for us. But being disturbed means we feel personally threatened by it. It's like, say, if we are in an ocean and the waves are battering us from various sides, we'll feel threatened. But if a rescue helicopter comes and lifts us up, and then now we are above, and now are there any possessions, are there other people in the, say the boat was wrecked, and are there other people over there? We are concerned about them. But we're not that threatened. So similarly, rising to the spiritual level helps us to face that fear with a greater sense of inner security. And there are various meditational practices in various traditions. And meditation is not just about sitting in a particular posture. It is not just about looking at a particular, or visualizing a particular thing, or seeing a light. The essence of meditation is to shift our focus from the changing to the unchanging. So there is an unchanging core within us, and when we shift our focus, that way gradually we start rising upward. So I come from India. We are a part of a yoga tradition where we chant mantras. So mantras are spiritual sounds that act as elevators for the consciousness. So as we chant the mantras, we chant the sacred sounds, it's like entering into an elevator. And as we enter into the elevator, the consciousness starts rising, rising, rising. So we need to find out some means by which we can actually elevate our consciousness. So arises at first an intellectual understanding, and then it is also a transformative experience that comes by appropriate spiritual practices. And that brings us to the last part. R is release. Now release is, sometimes we think of it as weakness. So release refers to what is not in our control. Just let go of it. So to put this in context once again, when we have something which is some valid danger that is there, that causes fear. And that fear we can deal with by focus and engage. But when there is a fearfulness, the domination of the emotion that is coming, one way to deal with it is, this, at my core, I am indestructible. Arise. And that way, we don't feel that threatened. But we may still say that, okay, but still this matters to me. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? So that which is not in our control, we just release it. Now, why should we release it? Because letting go is a strength. The more we try to hold on to the things that are not in our control, the more our thoughts go out of control. If we say, if we have a partner or a colleague, a friend, and they're not behaving the way we want them to. Now, the more we think about them, what happens is the more we become agitated. Now, of course, we can see how we can influence them as much as possible. But just dwelling on them, dwelling on the things that are not in our control, it is not strength, it is weakness. Because it makes us weak. It makes our thoughts go out of control. I was giving the same seminar in Texas, in America, and then afterwards, I was a firefighter in the audience, and he told me, after the talk we had a feedback session, and he told me the story that this happened once, actually twice something similar happened in the Texas forest fires, and once it happened in a forest fire in California also. So I came from Australia, and Australia also had severe brush fires recently. So now, when these fires occur in the forest, at that time the forest fighters, they go in and they go in to attack the fire from a particular direction. And they will go deep into the forest to attack it. And then they have a boss who's aware of the whole situation. And if the fire starts growing too much, they tell them, just retreat. And when they're given the orders to retreat, they just expect it to run back immediately. And at that time, they are given different orders. Sometimes they are told, just drop your hoses and run. They have these fire hoses, and they're not very heavy. But sometimes they have oxygen cylinder behind or whatever. But usually, it's more of the fire hose they have, and they told, drop it and run. So this happened that in Texas, that when they were coming, so they found that these firefighters could not reach in time. There's a group of about 6 firefighters, and all of them perished in the fire. And after that, when the fire died down and then they started looking at the remains, they found that the firefighters were basically just about 20 feet away from the safety. And they found all of them had their hoses in their hands. They had run almost 500 meters. And if they had dropped the hoses and run, they would have been able to cover those 20 feet. So now, when the fire is all around, actually the hose seem to be the only source of security. What if fire comes upon me? I'll use the hose. But holding on slowed them down, and that turned out to be fatal. Letting go can sometimes be a strength. And especially in today's world where there are so many things which are not on our control, learning to let go can be a great strength. Now, if we have a spiritual worldview, another way letting go can become easier. It's not just intellectual otherwise it will weaken me. But at another level, we can also understand that the universe moves purposefully. That even when bad things happen, something good can come out of the bad. And when I let go of the present, then maybe that's let go of the negativity in the present, let go of the thing that I can't control in the present. That's when maybe I open myself to something better in the future. So sometimes we have our plans about how things should be. And if they're not working out that way, sometimes it's just important to let go. So the more we hold on, the more the fear starts increasing. And nature often involves the stage of letting go of the past so that the better can emerge. We have clouds in the sky, they can look beautiful in the sky. But unless the clouds break, rains don't come. And so there's a cloud in the sky but it's not raining, and then you try to have cloud seeding to get it down. There's a drought below and there's a cloud above. But the cloud is not raining. So clouds have to be broken to get rains. Similarly, the ground has to be broken, plowing has to be done so that we can get some harvest from there. Then the grains have to be broken so that edible food comes up. So in each of these states, the past has to be given up. Although the past seems to be orderly, letting go of the past is what is required so that we can move forward. And when we do these things, now this fear is not just linear. We can start from anywhere. When we are in trouble, we can start with focus or engage or even arise or release. But if we do any of these, doing the others becomes easier. And if we do it linearly, it's not just linear, it becomes cyclic. When we release, we can focus better. Okay, that's not in my control now. What can I do about this? What is in my control? What can I do about it? And gradually, as we learn to go through this sequence of focus, engage, arise and release, we'll start getting a better hold on ourselves, and then we can find what is the best hold we can have on the situation. And that's how we can face our fears and emerge stronger through them. The specific dangers in life will come and go. But if through those dangers, we become more resourceful, we become more aware of our spirituality, we become more aware of how our mind works against us at times, then we can become more alert and learn to make sure that it works for us, not just in the times of fear, but also in other times. And in that way, fear can become the spur, the impetus for us to understand ourselves better and thereby empower ourselves more. So I'll summarize. I spoke today on the topic of facing our fears. I spoke broadly in 3 parts. First, how fear originates, then how fear works against us, and then lastly, how to deal with fear. So I talked about fear originates because when there is danger, then fear is a response that makes us alert and keep a safe distance from the danger. So fear is at the physical level, some danger. Then at the mind, there's a danger at the physical level. Fear is a response at the mental level. And then we are conscious beings who act on that fear. So whereas fear is natural and even essential, fearfulness is unnatural, it is undesirable. Fearfulness is where there is fear even in the absence of the tangible stimulus of fear. And fearfulness is more likely in today's world because most of our fears in the current complex world are not associated with tangible objects. We are not afraid of predators coming and pouncing on us physically. So because our fears are not tied to tangible objects, that's why we stay constantly in a state of fear. And that can exhaust us. And so what do we do about it? I talked about this 3-level model of the self: body, mind, and spirit. So fear is there when at the level of the body there's some danger, but fearfulness happens when there's a misalignment between the physical and the mental. And we as conscious beings get caught in the mental level, and we get caught by the imagination of the mind. So this mind is meant to act like a window to the outer world. Sometimes it can act like a TV screen. And when it starts acting like a TV screen and driving us nuts, at that time, how do we get a hold of ourselves? Talk about these 4 steps. To get out of the mind, either go down to the level of the body or go up to the level of the spirit. So going down to the level of the body, what was the acronym I used? Can you remember? Focus. What is the acronym overall?
Fear.
Fear, yeah. Focus and engage. So we interact with the world through our perceptions and through our actions. So focus means, how does this affect me right now? So we reduce the complexity of the world to some specific relevant stimulus. And then engages, what can I do about it right now? Then in this way, when we find something actionable and do some action, the grip of our mind and its imagination on us starts decreasing. During our idle time, our mind's imagination works overtime. So we regulate that by getting out of the mind at the physical level. And then to go up to the spiritual level. That is, we understand that we exist above our situations and above our emotions as spiritual beings, as conscious observers. And that way, if we understand this intellectually, then we can be concerned without being disturbed. And I talked about how if somebody in the ocean or somebody is above in a helicopter. So various meditational practices can help us raise our consciousness upward. And last R was release, where I talked about 2 aspects to it, that the more we hold on to the things not in our control, the more our thoughts go out of our control. So letting go can be a strength. For the firefighters caught in a fire, letting go of the hose empowers them to run faster and reach to safety. And letting go can become easier if we also have the spiritual understanding that the universe moves purposefully. So even if something bad is happening to me, which I would rather not happen, but maybe through that bad, something better can emerge. And in nature also things are broken down so that something better emerges from them. So with that understanding, based on spiritual wisdom and natural observation, we can let go. And this focus, engage, arise, release, it's a cycle. We can start from anyone, move forward linearly, and it will become cyclic eventually. And in this way, we'll get a better hold on ourselves, and then we can find the best hold on the situation by which we can navigate it effectively. And the biggest gain from fear is not just how we deal with that particular situation, but how we better understand ourselves, understand the workings of our inner mind, and make it work for us rather than against us. Thank you very much.